Hey there, welcome back to Farmcraft. In this video I'm tackling the hydraulic oil cooler. It lives in this area of the machine and we're going to step back in time and see how this thing looked when I first got it and what the problem is.
You look up in here, there's like this cloth lined hole, and that is the oil cooler up there, and there is obviously a leak. That thing in the center is a motor that runs a fan. Possibly there's a seal in that's leaking. I am gonna pop this thing off. In order to do that, I have to release this cloth shroud thing. Ugh, that's disgusting.
So this is the top of that oil cooler. I power washed down through this, degreased it multiple times, washed it multiple times, and we're still dripping oil.
I think it's coming from the cooler itself because I can see it all the way up here, even you know, above the seal that would be on this motor here. All right, it is time to attack this oil cooler. This thing has been dripping on me because this is where the engine is. This is where I've been doing all my work. And I'm constantly sticking rags and pig mats and anything I can up here to block this thing from dripping oil on my head. I've tried tightening all the connections. That doesn't do anything. The oil is coming from up in there somewhere. It's either the seal on the top of this fan motor or it's the cooler itself. And I'm hoping it's the motor. Having to replace that cooler or have it redone is probably going to be tough. I really have to come from the top down here, I think. So the first thing we're going to do is take the cooler off. It has two lines. One's right there, and then one's in the opposite corner right there. And I think they just unscrew. So let's go up there and see what we can do.
I should mention that I'm doing this repair simultaneously with the suction hose from the last video. So the hydraulic oil is all drained out, the tank valve is closed, so hopefully I won't get too much leakage. All right, here's my biggest wrench. That's a 2-incher, not big enough. Luckily I got the old adjustable, so I guess I lied. It's not my biggest wrench, but the adjustable goes on there.
Oh man! Boy, once you take this hose off, it may not seal again. Oh, there it goes. Just had to quit being a wimp. Right, before I take that all the way off, let's go do the other one. This one's gonna be tough. I don't have enough room to move the wrench in here. From the other side, I don't think I do either. I don't think I have a crow's foot that big. So I've got a big pipe wrench.
This piece of angle iron here is in the way. It's bolted here, but it's welded on the other side, and the entire frame that the oil cooler is on would have to come off at the same time. So it doesn't really help me. Even if I take it off, I'm still going to have this right in the way of the nut. I don't know, that seems kind of stupid. Yet another good design.
Well, I just recorded some great footage of me hitting it with an air hammer. It's loose now. I've got it hand tight. Yeah, of course some idiot forgot to hit record, so I didn't actually get the footage. But, you know, use your imagination. Put the old air hammer against the nut and she loosened up.
All right, all the bolts are out.
All right. Okay. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I should be able to just pick that thing up off of there. Oh, boy. It's made of aluminum, but it's not light. Probably still full of oil. Just putting a plug in each one. A good looking mess right there. That'll clean right up with a power washer. And you know, a lot of radiators have these really delicate aluminum fins. If you hit it with a power washer, it just ruins them. These are actually very tough. So where's the oil coming from? Yeah, I mean, this is just the fan here, so the only oil for the motor would be pretty well beneath that. But the fan does blow in an upward direction. But I've definitely got oil up in here. I think I'm gonna have to pressure test this thing. So my OCD wants to clean it, but let's cut to the chase and see if I can hear any air leaks here. Whoa. So I don't hear anything. It'd be great if this thing is not scrap. All right, let's do the old soapy water. I'll tell you, if this thing isn't leaking, that's great news. Because getting this replaced is going to be tough. I guess the next step is I'm going to get this thing cleaned up real well, and we'll do a little better job pressure testing it. I may need to figure out a way that I can actually put it underwater and look for bubbles. It would also be nice to know what pressure this thing operates. You know, it's a hydraulic oil cooler. The hydraulic return pressure is pretty high. Probably operates at least at 300 or 400 PSI. All right, degreaser. So if only I had a big container of water that I could put that in and check for bubbles. Yeah, I could put it in my friend's swimming pool, but I don't think she'd appreciate that. I'd end up getting oil in the pool. I could put it in the pond, but kind of the same thing. I don't want to get oil in the pond, and I would end up dropping it in and getting water inside of it, and I would like to avoid that if I can. So I need something a little more controlled. Huh. Look at that. Yeah, that's a cattle waterer, and it gets narrower as it goes down, so it won't fit in the bottom, but it will fit up here towards the top. This is it. It either leaks or it doesn't. It leaks. Wow. Had a lot of air in there. I saw a couple bubbles here, but I saw several there. Man, I really did not want this to be the problem. See it leaking there? Yeah, I think I probably have more than just one leak, actually. Yeah, I got quite a bit of air pressure in there. You can see it leaking. That is not what I wanted to see, but it is what I was expecting. So I've already called Case. This part is obsolete. They don't make them anymore. They found a used one for me. Good used for $2,000. I'm hoping I can do better than that. We are going to start the hunt.
So the way my cooler mounts, I have some flexibility. It could be a little bigger, a little smaller. So first I want to look for an off-the-shelf oil cooler that has the same cooling capacity that I could just replace this with. The other thing that's common with both radiators and oil coolers, heat exchangers like this, is you get them what's called re-cored. The core is the heart of the unit and where mine is leaking. Other than that, there's tanks and mounting plates welded on, and we'll look more at this later, but it is possible to just replace the core, essentially rebuilding the unit. I saw these two threaded holes and thought they might be used for pushing the fan off of the shaft. But unfortunately that didn't work. So it was on to the puller. That worked.
Yeah, I really wanted to get to that seal, because I suspect it's leaking too.
Yeah, I came into this thinking it would be this seal or the oil cooler, and it turns out it was both, because of course it was.
So there's our seal. Good old seal.
Alright, cleaning this up, I did see this O-ring was damaged. I didn't do that. But that was probably leaking some. And then obviously we need to replace the seal. It says 2035-6 right there. And you check the ID. It is of course 20. You check the OD. It's 35. So obviously it's going to be 6 deep, which I can't measure right now with it in there. There we go. So that looks like a double lip seal. Old O-ring that had a split in it, looks like. I don't think I did that, taking it off. There's a new one. And then old seal. New seal. This is an expensive seal. With shipping I ended up paying like 40 bucks, but this seal can take some PSI. I think it's up to 50 or something. It's not just a regular shaft seal. And that's what you want to use on these hydraulic motors, because they typically have to hold a little bit of pressure back. Not hydraulic pressure, but some. This guy should go in here like this, because your spring is going to face the pressure, and that goes on top of the hydraulic motor in that orientation. So, and rather than fooling around trying to pound it in, I'm just going to use the arbor press, because it works better. Actually didn't quite bottom it out because there's a lip there. So we'll use a socket. That arbor press does a nice job. I need to use that more often instead of trying to pound them in. Alright, new O-ring. Now we can get that motor sealed back up.
So now that is sealed up, I want to power wash this thing, but I didn't want to do it with that there and get a bunch of water in it. Get my hammer. It's nice to have that thing reasonably clean. Now we just need that cooler to come back.
I found several companies that would re-core the oil cooler.
They are working on rebuilding it. I found a company in Richmond that's working on it. It's actually costing me a little bit more than the online quote, but overall it's less because I don't have to pay any freight. Because I was going to have to ship mine to them and then ship theirs, you know, rebuilt one back to me. So yeah, it's going to cost me $2 grand for an oil cooler. What are you going to do? Hey, Dozer. That's a bull. Dozer. That's a bulldozer. That's not really working. But that is a bull. He's a big boy. Go check on them, Dozer. Make sure they're okay.
But don't try to play with them.
So I have a little news, guys. About a week ago, Big Mama died, and she was old. She was an old cow, and she lived a good life, but it was her time. But this year she had a calf, and this is her. That's a heifer, female, and she's doing well. Luckily, she was old enough that she didn't need the, she was still nursing, but was about ready to be weaned, so she's doing fine. So that's little mama. That's a cow dog.
True cow dog. He tells them cows how to do it. Likes to ride on their backs. What's that doing? Oh. Big Mama, who's on your back? Jackson.
What do you think of that, Big Mama?
She said, you're crazy.
Just get that dog off of me. Look at that leaky old oil cooler. Hey, check that out. Yeah, so I did it. I got it re-cored, and they let me keep the old core because I wanted to show it in the video so you can really see all it is. It's such a simple device. Basically, there's a tank on either end of it that's welded on, and that's where your in and out fittings are. So, you know, I'm not sure which way it goes, but it doesn't matter. The oil would come in here, fill this tank, and then it's going to be forced through these little chambers here, and with all the fins and everything. And then those chambers go the full length down the core to the other tank, and then it goes back out. And that's really all there is to it. So what they did, they basically built a new core and built it to the same dimensions, and then cut off the old tanks and welded them back on. This is what I decided was the best way to go. I looked for a long time on trying to just get a more modern oil cooler off the shelf that I could just order and wouldn't cost so much. Because, I mean, I ended up paying $2 grand for this. It's a lot of money. But I could not find one of the same dimensions. I could find the length and width, but it was half as thick. And that means you have far less heat transfer in that amount of space. And I had a little bit of flex room, but I couldn't double the size of it. The fan's only going to be as big as it is. And yeah, I had to stick with something pretty much the same size. I would also have to be doing replumbing and fittings. And when you really put it all together, this seemed the best way to go. This is basically the exact same thing that was there. It's brand new. It's not going to leak. All I got to do is reinstall it. What do you think, Paisley? Do you get excited over a new oil cooler? This is Paisley. She's not exactly a farm dog. We inherited this dog, and but she's a great dog. We've had her for several years, and she's part of the family. Good old Paisley. She keeps Dozer in his place. She will try to correct him, and she gets airborne, biting at his face, and he just kind of is confused. Good old Paisley. So it was leaking most right there. So I'm gonna cut this thing off on this saw. It's gonna take 2 passes. I'd like to get a better look and see if we can actually see where the leak was. All right, there's our mark. And basically we just have the channels. Can't really tell if those are brazed together or what. And then just cooling fins in between. That's all just cooling fins. And sometimes with radiators, they used to repair these with epoxy. They would pour epoxy in the area that was leaking and let it set up, and even put some vacuum on it to draw the epoxy into the hole. And they could get them to stop leaking that way. I think I didn't want to do that. I think that's unlikely to be successful here because this is a hydraulic oil cooler. It's operating at much higher PSI than a radiator, which, you know, radiators, it's just a water pump. You're talking about 15, 20 PSI, maybe even not that. This is in the hundreds of PSI. So that epoxy, if it did hold at all, it wasn't going to hold very long. I just didn't want to go that route. All right, well, I don't think I'm going to be able to actually spot the leak. But apparently there's a pinhole somewhere in there where it went through this very thin outer layer and was allowing oil to come out. That's all it takes. Kind of cool to really see this thing broken down into its components. You know, just these little channels, the fins, tank on either end. There's your radiator or your hydraulic cooler. All right, here's the fittings that were in the cooler before. This is 1-inch British pipe to whatever that is. I would imagine it's some kind of DIN fitting, but it's what's on there. So I just need to screw this back into the tanks on both ends, and we're ready to go. I am going to put new O-rings. Click. It does not want to go back to the exact same holes that it was, or the bolts that it was on before. I'm wondering if they didn't cut this off and they lost the saw kerf in width, and then they welded it back on, but now I don't have enough width. It's alright, I mean, I can just grind it out a little bit, but that's kind of a bummer. Looks good though, doesn't it? So that lets those slide in a little bit. That way these bolts won't need as much work to line up. But these main bolts on the corner, I'm still going to have to grind on the oil cooler to make room. There we go. From the top. All right, I got all the bolts in, and we have a new oil cooler. I am happy about that. I have been so tired of this thing leaking. How much oil is going to come out of that? Why is there oil coming out of that? Why wouldn't there be oil coming out of that? It's not leaking anymore. Why is it not threading on? It's the same adapter that was there. Now it's going on. Yeah, there's not enough room.
Remember, this is the one I took off with the air hammer because there wasn't room for a wrench.
Chain wrench to the rescue so far. It's the only thing I'm able to get on there and tighten that at all. All right, that's pretty tight. I could tighten it more if I need to, but I don't really want to. That was obnoxious. All right, let's see if we can get this other one. See if it wants to spew oil everywhere. Probably right in my face. No, okay. Oh, that one threaded right on. Large Marge is feeling a little merciful after the last fight. Thanks, Margie. Yeah. This one I can get a wrench on. Click! The oil cooler is on. We are underneath the oil cooler, and this is what it's supposed to look like. It was a oily, greasy, absolute mess before. Ugh, that's disgusting. And hopefully it's going to stay looking like this from now on. We are ready to test this thing out. Let's start this thing up and make sure there's no leaks. All right, the oil cooler looks good. Don't see any drips. I think we got that problem licked. Well, there you go, guys. The oil cooler is done. It doesn't leak. I'm really happy about that. That's another thing checked off the list, and Large Marge is well on her way to being fully back in service. Still more work to do. Next week, we're going to be doing some more hydraulic repair and working on the control pattern, which turns out to be kind of tricky in this machine. But we'll see if I can figure this thing out. We'll see you next week.